Hello, welcome to FYI Television. I'm Arthur Crofton. It's good to have you with us today, and we are really honored to have with us Clayton Bromberg, the president of Underwoods Jewelers. Underwoods, Florida's finest jeweler, in business since 1928, which is quite remarkable, quite remarkable. Tell us, obviously the history of Underwoods is so important, but it began with a man named Underwood.
That's right. Herb Underwood founded Underwood Jewelers in 1928 in Palatka, Florida. And even though the Depression would come a little bit later on, he actually was able to really significantly grow his business from 1928 to 1940 in Palatka. In 1940, he moved the store from Palatka to Jacksonville, Florida. In and about the same time, a man named Robert Shipley, who's the founder of the Gemological Institute of America and the American Gem Society, was making a run through the United States trying to sell jewelers on the notion of the science of gemology and having gemological equipment in their stores like binocular microscopes. He found Mr. Underwood and went and made a presentation to him. And what came out of that is he became intensely interested in the science of gemology and also educating both staff and customers about the jewelry business. You fast forward through World War II, and shortly after World War II, as television became prominent, he was the first jeweler in the United States to use television as a means to advertise his jewelry stores.
Pioneer.
He was a real pioneer.
A real pioneer in television advertising. And in fact, we have some film of Mr. Underwood from 50 plus years ago, doing just that, educating his viewers. Just take a look at this. This is Mr. H.F. Underwood, the founder of Underwoods Jewelers.
Hi, everybody. May I suggest you take a look at the wristwatch you're wearing? If it's a lady's watch, the movement is probably smaller than a dime. But there are nearly 200 parts packed tightly together in that little case. If you'll follow a few simple suggestions about the care of your watch, you may be able to postpone the $15 or $20 repair charge waiting for you when it stops running. Number one, don't wear your wristwatch in the kitchen. Steam escaping from boiling vegetables or a steaming kettle can get into your watch. Steam is water, and water will rust your watch. Water splashing from the kitchen sink or in the bathroom can also put water in your watch. It only takes one tiny drop of water on the spot where you wind your watch to start a bad rust condition. Also, never put your wristwatch into your handbag. Most handbags contain loose talcum or face powder, and that powder is finer than the finest dust. It'll work its way into the watch case and into the movement, and that will dry up the oil and hasten a repair job. How often should a watch be cleaned and overhauled? When it stops running or becomes undependable. Do not take your watch into a repair shop just because it's been a year since it was overhauled. Some watches will run 2 years or even longer and still keep excellent time, especially the waterproof models. Your watch will usually tell you when it needs attention. When it does need attention, by all means have the work done by a competent watchmaker. If you own a fine watch, please remember when it left the factory, it had been given fine, delicate, timekeeping adjustments that made it a superior timepiece. A mediocre watch repairman can take your watch apart and clean it, but he does not have the skill required to restore its fine timekeeping qualities and make it run the way the factory designed it to run. There are 5 Underwood stores in Jacksonville, and all our watchmakers are fine, expert watchmakers. Some of my men have been with me for 25 years.
Wow, what a fascinating piece of film that is. Seeing Mr. Underwood himself and talking about watches and watch repair. Now, is Underwood still in the watch repair business?
We are. Underwoods has the only authorized Rolex watch repair facility in North Florida, and we have it on premise. There's not another one in North Florida that you can go to and have the work done on premise by Rolex-trained watch technician.
And in fact, your Rolex authorized watch technician is Casey.
That's correct.
And in fact, we've got Casey here explaining about how a Rolex watch works and how repairs take place. Watch this piece of video. Casey will explain it to you.
The first thing I have to do is take the watch apart. We begin by removing the case back. And from here, we visually inspect things, make sure everything, see if we see anything off at the beginning that is a little red flag. Look for any non-genuine parts, or see if there's excessive moisture damage or anything like that. Everything looks to be pretty standard right here. So from here we're going to do basic service on it and clean it and oil it and adjust it and disassemble it. And first step here from here would be to disassemble it. After we've disassembled the Rolex watches here, we then bring it over to our RM90 cleaning machine in order to clean all the parts of the watch. It has a multi-stage cleaning process that we go through, a timed cleaning procedure as well as 2 rinsing processes in order for it to get cleaned and then rinsed properly, as well as a drying time. This is one of the most important parts of servicing your Rolex watch, is the actual cleaning of the watch. It's important that we do this to get all the old oils out of there. So a lot of times they're dried and just gunky at this point. Now we want to actually clean those out in order that we can put fresh oils in there so that your watch will be keeping much better time. We've just had the watch cleaned. Now we're going to assemble it. This is not anything you want to try at home. There's about 200 parts in here, so you want a Rolex trained professional to be able to do this. We have all the Rolex equipment that they require that we have to be able to do this, from the water testing to polishing. All of that we have here, so we'll do that. We'll use the proper Rolex lubrications while we assemble it, and re-inspect everything as we're putting it back together also, using the equipment that they have instructed us to use. And from here we'll start assembling it then. A lot of people don't think that polishing is an important part of servicing your Rolex watch, but it is. You must use the proper Rolex wheels in order to attain the Rolex finish that's on there. In fact, they have their own special masking tape in order to protect the gold finish and before we polish the sides that are satin finished. So when our customers pick up their watches after they've been serviced, they look like they've come straight from the factory. After the polishing is complete, we then assemble the case and then water test the watch. The first step is the vacuum test, the depth test, and then lastly the temperature test. We do this as a 3-step process to ensure that your Rolex watch maintains its waterproof seal as the Rolex Oyster is known for. And the next step is regulating your Rolex watch using our Vibrograph B600 timing machine. This is the step in which we calibrate and fine-tune your watch in order to fit Rolex tolerance levels for your specific Rolex caliber movement. The next step is casing up your timepiece using Rolex approved equipment that actually Rolex supplies. You want to be sure to use your authorized Rolex dealer to do this, because not just anybody can get the equipment, only an authorized Rolex dealer can do so. And you'll be able to wear your watch for years to come on your wrist. I can tell a lot just by the sound that the watch makes using the microphone attached to here. After years of experience, you learn what they sound like on the different calibers. Even still telling us whether it's running fast or slow, however many seconds a day that it's doing so, I still must go in and fine-tune that using some hand adjustments. So if you have a Rolex, you know where to come. Come see us at Underwood Jewelers.
That's incredible. What an amazing explanation of how Rolex watches are serviced. So Clayton, you get your watch serviced at Underwoods by Casey. What does it cost?
Well, to have a Rolex watch serviced at our facility costs $575.
Okay.
Not only do they do all the things Casey talked about, but when you get the watch back, it looks brand new. The other thing I can tell you is this. I'm wearing a Rolex watch right now.
Indeed.
This Rolex watch was given to me by my grandfather over 35 years ago when I graduated from college. Now, I'm in the business and I've been a Rolex watch dealer my whole life. So I'm able to have this serviced every 5 years. But the thing I find interesting about this watch is this watch runs and looks just as good today as the day I got it. And that's the day I'm never going to forget.
The day it was given to you.
That's right.
A point in your life. And maybe one day this will pass on to your descendants?
It certainly will. If you take care of a Rolex, it'll keep time within their parameters for over 100 years if you just take care of it.
That's incredible. So for $575, you get all of that work and all of that service. What other extras are there with the Rolex service from Underwoods?
Well, when you get the Rolex watch serviced from us,
right,
we give a 2-year guarantee with that service. Now, as an added extra, if the watch was bought at Underwoods originally, we give that original 5-year warranty. And for the rest of your life, any service work that needs to be done on that watch is done at 10% off.
So it's a great investment, and you really get to take advantage of some special offers, if you will, from Underwoods when you buy your Rolex from Underwoods.
That's exactly right. And the other thing is, I know that people wonder, well, there are a lot of other places that can work on Rolex watches. Well, really, there are only 2 places in Jacksonville that are official Rolex jewelers that can actually get the Rolex parts and do the work, and that's Mayors and Underwoods. Anybody else that says they can do the work on their Rolex watch, they may or may not be able to furnish the right parts, and you're taking a chance.
And you will risk the integrity of the watch, won't you?
That's right.
Well, we're talking about Rolex watches, and this Rolex watch of yours. Can you take this off for a second?
Certainly.
Here, this watch, what an absolutely gorgeous Rolex watch. Here is the watch Clayton was talking about, 40 years old almost.
35, a little over that.
You're getting on for 40, and look at it. It is in absolutely immaculate condition. And that is obviously something, as you said, will remain in your family. Now, obviously, Rolex watches are not inexpensive. What is it that you're buying when you buy and invest in a Rolex watch?
Well, first of all, a Rolex watch is an investment of sorts in timekeeping that you're going to wear on your wrist. The best story I know to demonstrate that is in 2007, we were roaring and things are going good in the economy. There were probably 12 luxury type watches that had intrinsic value outside of the store and had marketability. When we get to about 2010, after we were climbing out of that recession, there are really 2 watches that are holding their value that still have that type value that outside of buying them brand new, and those 2 watches are Rolex and Patek Philippe.
And Patek Philippe are a very high expensive end of watch.
Very.
The Rolex actually is, in the scheme of these watches, relatively affordable.
Well, as it was said to me by a Rolex and a watch collector, Rolex watches to the watch collecting world is to watches what the U.S. dollar is to world currency.
It is the world currency of watches.
That's right.
And you see Rolex, of course, it's a global brand. And the neat thing is that here in Jacksonville, Underwoods Jewelers is your official Rolex source.
That's
right.
Right
here for sales and for service.
And have been for over 60 years.
And you've got beautiful Rolex displays in each of the stores.
Yes, we do.
If you haven't taken a look, you should.
If you really want to hear a really good story about Rolexes and how they hold their value, we had something happen in our San Marco store with a Rolex watch, and Michael Richards took care of it for the store, and I think it would be really worth people's time to hear that story.
Tell us about it, Michael.
The story Mr. Bromberg is referring to really is an extraordinary example of the value of a Rolex watch. About 3 or 4 months ago, we had a customer bring in a very used, very worn Rolex that had sat in a jewelry box for over 30 years. They decided to have the watch repaired and restored so that a family member could wear it. The watch was originally sent to Rolex to have it repaired, and they returned it saying there were no parts available to repair it correctly. So they sent it to our watchmaker, and he took a look at it. Unfortunately, the answer was the same. The watch ended up on my desk with a note asking, was there anyone, anywhere, that could fix this watch so the customer could wear it? The customer had valued the watch when they left it with us at about $500. Fortunately for the customer, it was a watch I had seen one other time in my career at Underwoods. It was a very early model stainless steel Submariner. I recognized it because it's something that, as I said before, we almost never see. I called the customer and explained that if we did what they were asking us to do, which was to replace the bezel, replace the dial, and do whatever we could to make the watch run, it would be a huge mistake on their part. The watch as it was, not running, very worn, in my estimation was worth more than a brand new Rolex watch out of our case. When I told the customer this, they were very skeptical. They found it hard to believe. So we finished the conversation with me letting them know, or telling them that I would be back in touch with them and let them know after I did some research if I in fact was correct. I was able to call the customer back and tell them that, great news for them. They really shouldn't put any money into restoring this watch because I could give them a brand new stainless steel Rolex Submariner right out of our case that did run, and a check for $5,000 in exchange for this old watch that couldn't be repaired correctly. They thought about it for about 1 second and jumped on this opportunity. Now this is an extraordinary example, but we run across things like this all of the time. Watches that were bought at the end of Vietnam in an Army PX for $200 that we can now give a customer $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to buy a new Rolex watch. Truly, it's the only watch that exists in the world that you can wear and enjoy 24 hours a day, and 30 years from now, make money on it.
That's an amazing story, Michael. Absolutely incredible. I mean, that doesn't happen every day, but I would imagine as a jeweler, you really relish stories like that. I mean, how else would one handle it if one has the integrity of Underwoods?
Yeah, I don't know how other people would have handled it. I just know how Underwoods handled it, and I think we handled it exactly the right way.
There's no doubt about it. So how do you end up deriving the value as you did in that watch? How do you come up with these values?
Well, the way we came up with that value is we had to use the expertise of somebody else, and we're an official purchasing agent for a company called Circa, who's the world's largest estate buyer of jewelry. And so the way we came up with that value is by contacting them as to what the value of the watch would have been. And that's where we actually sold the watch so we could get the customer their money and they could buy the watch they wanted.
So Circa not just takes watches in, but also takes other jewelry, right?
Correct. They're the largest estate buyer of jewelry in the world. We happen to be an official Circa estate buying agent, but they're the largest in the world, and jewelry's the biggest part of it. Watches are just a part of what they do.
So you have some examples of some of the pieces that come in that they can help you grow maybe to a new piece of jewelry.
Yeah. In fact, here's a lot that I'm getting ready to send off to Circa for them to make an offer on. Mm-hmm. The customer brought this to us not because they necessarily want cash for it. What they're interested in doing is she wants some David Yurman jewelry, and she also wants to buy her husband a Rolex. So she went through her jewelry case and brought what she knows she's never going to use and asked us to send it off. It's interesting because one of the things she has is a Patek Philippe that nobody ever wears anymore. This is a prize and will bring a lot of money. And the second piece is a platinum brooch. Here, people don't wear brooches anymore, but this one is signed Cartier, and as a result of it, it's a collectible piece.
Look at that, it's lovely. But because of its signature, it makes it extra valuable.
It makes it that much more valuable. And there are some pieces here that would be scrap gold. These are typically going to be bought for scrap gold.
The chain and so forth.
But the rest of the pieces out here are usable estate type jewelry, which they will make an offer on. Mm-hmm. My guess is that she's going to easily get enough money to buy the collections of David Yurman that she's already picked out, and she's probably going to get enough money out of these pieces to almost 100% buy the Rolex that she's picked out for her husband also.
Wow, so this is this collection that has come in, and you say that this will get her all that lovely David Yurman, and I know you ladies love David Yurman, and men too, and she can get a Rolex with this as well. That surprises me.
Well, it's good. My guess is the offer is going to be close for her to be able to get that, but the reason she's probably going to be able to get everything she wants is when somebody brings something to us and we send it to Circa, if they want to use it towards any Underwood merchandise, we add 25% to the offer, and they can take that out in merchandise from the store.
So if it were $1,000, the cash offer, it would be $1,250.
That's exactly right.
Wow, and that makes a huge difference.
It makes a big difference.
Up your buying power with just jewelry sitting around in your jewelry case.
Well, and if it's $10,000, it's $12,500.
Indeed, indeed, quite remarkable. So it's obviously a time to bring your items to Underwoods and let Circa take care of that for you, because I know you have a lot of lovely things that ladies would love to walk out of the store wearing.
That's the business we're in. We're in the business of having things that ladies want to own.
Clayton, I've always been fascinated by the Rolex brand. It is a global brand, literally in every country in the world. Just about people know, who know anything about watches, the first name that comes to mind is usually Rolex. And that's been quite an achievement. But many people don't know the actual seed origins, the genesis, if you will, of Rolex. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I think the best way to describe it is tell you a little bit about the history.
Yeah.
Rolex was founded as a company originally in London, England.
Really?
And it was called Wilsdorf Davis. And they made watches. And Hans Wilsdorf, who happened to be a Swiss orphan, ends up buying Davis out, and he moves the company back to Geneva, where they make Rolex watches. And you know, he has some historic things that happen in the watch industry. He makes the first practical wristwatch.
Yes.
And he makes it in a way where he has what's called an oyster case. It's a waterproof watch with a manual wind movement in it. And to demonstrate that it's waterproof, him being a pretty smart guy, he drapes it around the neck of the first woman to swim the English Channel.
Is that right?
And he uses that as a way of promoting this notion of wearing a wristwatch that's going to be dustproof, going to be shockproof, and is practical to wear on your arm. Up until that point, everybody was wearing pocket watches, and they keep it in
their vests,
in a vest pocket. So you fast forward through into World War II, and some of our GIs get the experience of owning Rolex watches, and they bring them back, and these watches are near indestructible. And so in 1948, he opens up an agency in the United States at 585th, and they grow the brand. My grandfather, Bromberg, was one of the first people to put Rolex in. In fact, Renee Denton opened, who was the president of Rolex, was the sales rep. He was the person who opened my family in Birmingham. Well, you keep growing the watch keeps getting better. Hans Wilsdorf is still at the helm in Switzerland. He's the founder. His wife precedes him in death, and he sees that he's not going to live forever, but he wants his only child, because he has no biological children, he wants his only child to survive forever.
Which is the Rolex.
Which is the Rolex watch brand.
Right.
So he creates the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation to become the owner of Rolex watch upon his death. And the stated goal of the Wilsdorf Foundation was to support the Catholic orphanages of Europe.
Interesting.
Because he himself had been put into a Catholic orphanage until he and his sister could be placed.
You'd mentioned he was an orphan in the beginning.
He had never forgotten about that. So now, to this day, the Rolex watch company has one owner. It's the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation. They actually own two watch companies. They own Rolex Watch, and they own also Tudor Watch,
Tudor, okay.
which we also carry. And the reason for their existence is to make the finest timepieces. They've removed greed and all those things by being owned by a foundation, but they're also being run to support benevolent things. And that's not like any other watch company in the world, and that's one of the things that makes them unique. And then if you look at some of the things that Rolex has done through the years, around here locally, like the 24-hour of Daytona.
Yeah, the sports car race.
The Rolex 24.
Rolex 24, yes.
It's run right down the road. It's one of the. It's
our friends at Brumos Porsche have raced in it for many years.
That's right. Won it many times, and there's two huge 24-hour races in the world. Mm. Le Mans and Daytona. The two series are combined now, and we're right there where one of the big international events takes place. You know, they're involved in tennis, they're involved in golf.
You
they're
see
involved
them at
in
the US
yachting.
Open and the Wimbledon and so forth as the official timepiece and the time clock keeper and
Right.
all of these kinds of things.
And now they're involved in Formula One.
And yes, in the World Championship open wheel racing, yes. That's very, very high end globally, isn't it? Fascinating history and origin, and obviously they're careful, but as an official Rolex dealer, which you are, and official Rolex servicing, official Rolex sales at Underwood Jewelers, why is it you think they've been so preeminently successful?
Well, I think the best answer to that is because of the watch I'm wearing right now.
Okay, anyway, I see this.
After 35 years, it
35 years old.
still runs and looks as good as the day I got it.
Looks like it's right off your shelf.
And when you make something really good, that's really recognizable, and you're not always tinkering with anything other than just to make it just a little bit better, and you don't have the same management in place that's always screaming for more profit on the next quarter, but you do have a foundation that says, we just want to keep making the watch just a little bit better. I can guarantee you when you put all those things together and you put it with a network of who they sell through and the type people it is, like us at Underwoods, you're going to be successful.
Absolutely, and that is a lovely watch given to you on a special point in your life, right?
The day I graduated from college, as my grandfather said, give you whatever you want as long as it's something you'll always remember me for.
And you do.
Every day.
That beautiful Rolex watch. Rolex, if you're interested in Rolex, you love Rolex, you want your Rolex serviced, Underwood Jewelers. Any one of their 4 stores, they can take care of you. Well, there we are. We've covered a great deal on the program here today, talking about Underwood's founding by H.F. Underwood back in 1928 in Palatka, then moving to Jacksonville. Some great history. We enjoyed seeing that film. Then we learned about service and how Casey could do all that work servicing Rolex watches. Again, the only place to bring a Rolex watch for service at all is Underwood's Jewelers. And we also heard from Michael about that amazing story about the value of a Rolex piece that the owner didn't even know he had. That was a little treasure he found. I found that out by bringing it to a knowledgeable place like Underwood's Jewelers, and how Circa, the company you work with, helped realize that for him, as it does with all of this jewelry on the table in front of us. Quite remarkable experience there at Underwood's Jewelers. So there you are. If you have jewelry at home that is sitting there gathering dust in a jewelry box somewhere, it may have some tremendous intrinsic value. Bring it into Underwood's Jewelers and let them, through their affiliation with Circa, turn that into something absolutely gorgeous for you. We thank you for watching. This is Arthur Crofton, along with the president of Underwoods Jewelers, Clayton Bromberg. This is FYI Television. If you'd like to see this program again, we will be airing on the same channel at the same time next week. Till then, have a great day. Bye-bye.